Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Craig Burrell, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Class 2, Greg Hooper. We warmly welcome the family of Sergeant Thomas Joseph Maxwell, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Queensland and RSL Victoria who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony around Australia. During the ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. Please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Please sit if you wish to do so. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Sergeant Thomas Joseph Maxwell. Thomas Maxwell was born in 1886, one of 12 children of Thomas and Mary Maxwell of Queanbeyan, New South Wales. The Maxwells were a pioneering family of the Canberra region who had a long-standing association with the Brindabellas. Thomas's mother Mary had worked for the Cunningham family, who owned Tuggeranong Homestead, where Charles Bean would later write the first volumes of the official history of Australia in the Great War. After attending school at Tuggeranong and Thara, Thomas worked as a stockman, and in years before the First World War was the overseer of Peppercorn Station on the upper Murrumbidgee River. To those who knew him, Thomas was a fine type of Australian youth, a splendid horseman and an all-round sport. Thomas enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force in Sydney in September 1914, where medical examiners found that he had previously been shot through the left side and arm. After a period of training at Rosebery Park, Thomas embarked for Egypt in December as an original member of the 7th Light Horse Regiment. The Light Horse were considered unsuitable for the initial operations on Gallipoli, but were deployed without their horses to reinforce the infantry. The 7th landed on Gallipoli in late May 1915, where they held the line on the far right of the Anzac beachhead. Thomas rose through the ranks quickly and by October held the temporary rank of sergeant. He was knocked down by Turkish shrapnel and sustained a slight head wound, but remained on duty. In a letter home, he remarked wryly that a more serious wound would have brought him a spell from the trenches. The 7th Light Horse remained on Gallipoli until the evacuation, when it returned to Egypt and formed part of the Anzac Mounted Division. Thomas reverted back to the rank of private, but remained an experienced member of his squadron. In April 1916, the regiment joined British forces in the defence of the Suez Canal, and in August fought at Romani. From then until the end of the war, the 7th Light Horse Regiment participated in the advance that pursued the Ottoman Turks across the Sinai Desert and into Palestine. Throughout 1917, Thomas was involved in some of the most notable actions of the Palestine campaign. The regiment fought at Gaza in March and April, and after Beersheba was involved in the capture of Jerusalem. The focus of British operations then shifted to the Jordan Valley, where in early 1918 the regiment was involved in the capture of Jericho and in bitter fighting at Amman and Es Salt. After months of heavy fighting, the regiment was enjoying a well-earned rest outside the town of Jericho. Very early on the morning of the 7th of May 1918, the 7th Light Horse Lines were bombed by a number of German aircraft, which killed 8 men, wounded 10, and caused a number of casualties among the horses. Among the dead was Thomas Maxwell, who was 31 years old. He was buried at the military cemetery in Jerusalem. A small epitaph chosen by his grieving parents appears on his headstone. One of war's victims, one of God's own. Thomas Maxwell is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Sergeant Thomas Joseph Maxwell, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. Thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and good evening.